The question remains, why Amos is single? No, really, can anyone tell me? I fully don't know. I think it's very easy to put yourselves into the shoes of Toby, Marlow and Lucy Moss as they came to write their next musical. They have just come off the back of Six, a musical that was initially written as just a small thing going up to the Edinburgh Fringe, and has now exploded and expanded into this worldwide sensation, with an open-ended run in the West End, Tony Awards for their Broadway production, and versions of it opening up across the world. This thing started off so small and has become so big. So expectations are high for whatever Toby, Marlow and Lucy Moss were going to do afterwards. What was their solution? They have made Why Am I So Single, a semi-autobiographical musical about their terrible, terrible love lives, which is very relatable, thank you. You can see exactly what they're going for with this idea, especially as you hear that concept. And for people of my generation, we immediately go, Yep, I can see the picture. But now this musical has opened straight into the Garrick Theatre in the West End. Now I have seen it, what do I think? Let's find out. But if you haven't seen my face before, hi, I'm Ellie, I talk about theatre. I'm the most chaotic theatre person on the internet. I do reviews, I do discussions, I do versus brackets and tier lists, and if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider hitting like and subscribe, it really helps me out, helps out the channel. But let's dive into Why Am I So Single? I think Why Am I So Single is a great musical, but, and sadly, that is quite a big but. There is a lot to love about this, and I had a great time watching it. And while I'm about to break down a lot of what didn't really work about this show, I want that to be the main thing you take away right now. Despite Why Am I So Single's flaws, it is still a sincerely heartfelt and entertaining show. But I think the issue for Why Am I So Single is that with this musical, Toby, Marlow and Lucy Moss had a lot to prove. And one thing they wanted to prove was that they could write a more straightforward musical. They didn't want a one-act show like Six, which blurs the lines between musical and concert so much that people will often straight up denounce it as a musical. And within that, they strove to make this a more straightforward musical. It's got musical theatre references, it's got a two-act structure, and honestly, I think the latter was its downfall. Because when you hear the concept of Why Am I So Single, it sounds very fringy. You can sum it up in one line. It's two 20-something-year-olds talking about why they are single. And honestly, the musical doesn't really expand itself beyond that. So much so that if this was a one-act musical, if this musical was, say, 90 minutes long, let's take it longer than Six, because I feel like it could have gone longer. I feel like it could even push itself to 100 minutes. If it was a one-act show, this would be a 5-star musical. But because they're so determined to make this into a 2-act show, it's had to stretch itself so thin that for a lot of this musical, they are touching on very similar ideas. They're doing big numbers, but it feels like this is all kind of material that we already saw earlier into the musical. We have songs that feel like they drag on a little bit too long. And pacing-wise, all of these ideas feel like they would be so much more succinct in a shorter runtime. Because that is Why Am I So Single's biggest flaw. It's its fatal flaw. There is not enough material here for a 2-act musical. And you really, really do feel that. I do think this musical may have been hurt by the fact that it has jumped straight to the West End. I know it's not always fair to compare, but let's take Six as the example here. That show started off at the Fringe. It then went to the Arts Theatre for a short run. It came back to the Arts because of the demand from audiences. And from there, it has grown and grown and grown. But along that journey, they've been able to perfect things. They've been able to tweak things. They've added additional songs, they've refined numbers, they've changed costumes. They've had that journey and that time in development to get it to the place where it can be on the stage of the vaudeville, of the Lena Horne on Broadway, and be so big scale when it initially started as so intimate. Why Mr. Single feels like it needed something similar. Not even as long as 6 took, but just something. Some people suggested a Fringe run, and I feel like the show is just, it's already a little bit too big to take it to somewhere like Fringe. A show like Kathy and Stella did a shorter version at the Fringe and then had a little tour, and it's more so the little tour where it was able to refine itself into the version that was able to go into the West End. I honestly feel like Why Mr. Single needed something like a run at the Other Palace, a run at Southwark Playhouse. It needed to go off West End in a smaller venue first to build up that hype and to be able to refine this musical a little bit more, because all of the ingredients are there. I love the autobiographical nature of this show. It's really funny. You can feel Marlow and Moss kind of poking fun at themselves for a lot of it. It has such a unique voice. It's so different to anything in the West End right now. Even 6 feels different to it, because it feels like with this they've been able to completely and utterly let go of everything and really lean into that Gen Z millennial style. Something that we don't really have many musicals in the West End that feel like that. We have fringy shows, we have shows that are aimed for a younger demographic, we have teen shows, but we don't have anything that feels like this. As well as that, from a personal perspective, I love how queer this feels. It's so good to see a musical in the West End led by a trans performer playing a trans role. We have had West End musicals where it's been a one-person show and that person has happened to be non-binary. We've had shows where non-binary people have been supporting roles. We've seen roles in the West End be played by non-binary performers or trans performers, but those are not roles that were made or designed for trans people. This is a real first. And I certainly hope it's not a last. For the love of God, I hope it's not the last for a while. Please, we are begging for more trans representation in the West End. But they really seized the opportunity to explore that with the writing. And I feel like that relatability and that honesty is what queer audiences are begging for right now. And it's just so funny. It's got that style of comedy that Toby, Marlow, and Lucy Moss had in 6 and have expanded on here. It's so absurd. It's so weird in places. But they nail that comedy. They nail the quick timing, the punchlines, the one-liners. And that's what you connect to in this musical. It's all there. It is all already there. It's packaged up in a neat little bow, tied up, kissed and handed to you. It's hard not to be charmed by this show. And I've seen people complain that this show may feel a little bit outdated in a couple of years, or we're going to look back at it and cringe. But I don't think that is an issue when this is live theatre. This is theatre that is being performed now. It kind of makes sense that we reflect now on stage. And honestly, I feel like those are things that you can change if you ever revive this show. It lasted years and years and years and you tweak the material as you went along. But what you can't replace is a heart. What you can't replace is that emotion and that feeling, which this musical does have. As you can tell, there's so much about this show that does work. Fundamentally, there is something here. There's so many wonderful highlights in this writing. There's so many brilliant moments. There's so many fantastic references. Even if they lean the references a little bit too heavy on one musical, I feel like it would have been nicer to reference a little bit more material. It feels like we're very stuck on the main hit here. I feel like they're a little bit worried that their audience are not going to be massively strong musical theatre fans, so they kind of focus all their energy into one musical. You can do bigger and maybe even some more niche references than that, but you know. But it's so nice to see a musical just about platonic friendship. It's all there in this material. It's fun, it's charming, it's relatable. The representation is done so well. The comedy is so slick and well done. It's a great, well-produced show. It's just stretched. we find ourselves dancing around the same topics. We find ourselves going back to the same ideas. And because of that, we don't really get to see a straight journey for these characters. We don't really get to see them learn too much about themselves, because it feels like they start to open up about a topic and have to come back because they need to come back and dance around that topic again. All these problems that would have been fixed if you trim the fat. And honestly, that's really the only thing that I would massively change about Why Am I So Single. The actual stuff within it is great. I think the size of the show is great. I think having two main leads, a kind of side character, and then a giant ensemble really does work. It's just that we seem to be repeating ourselves to a point where it feels like we're just kind of doing that because we need to fill time. Let's talk a little bit about the music of the show. Now, if you like the style of Six, if you like the music in Six, there's definitely things in here that you are going to enjoy. I think while there's material that definitely could be cut down or just removed because it feels a little bit unnecessary, or could be done through dialogue, I do think that in general, this is a blast of a score. Why Am I So Single as an opening number? So fun. So fun. And I think it's a perfect introduction to the style of comedy that this musical is going for. I mean, lines like, "The only thing I'm eating out is this can of Pringles," genuinely hilarious. I love when they break the fourth wall in this number as well. There's a really cute detail where like all of the ensemble are the kind of things around their apartment. Like one of them's the fridge, one of them comes out of the plant, and they're constantly talking to their ensemble members like, "Oh, maybe we should wait a little bit. Make them wait for the ensemble members to come out. Give them a little bit more later. Keep them waiting." This fourth wall breaking kind of disappears after a little while, but is severely entertaining in this number. It's fun, it's boppy, it's relatable, it's got very comedic lines, it's great. 8 Dates is a very funny number as well. It's a little bit repetitive by the end of it because you have to kind of go through every single date and you're like, okay, all right. But I think it's really well staged and extremely relatable. I love the over-exaggeration of the different boys they're going out with. And I think Ellen Kane's choreography really does shine here. Another number where the choreography really shines is See You Never. This number is really, really inspired, as Noah Thomas's character Artie is speaking to Nancy about a boy that she's still kind of hung up with. The whole number is done to the sound of an iPhone texting. You know, a little like tappy sound? But they do it to that and then they add tap dancing to it. So they're tapping along to the text message being typed out. Brilliant. So funny, so creative, such a really genius idea that is really, really effective. And a fun number for this side character as well. Just In Case is our first ballad in the show, a really sweet and heartfelt number, if a little bit too long. And if you want a great reflection of the absurdity that this show can reach, all you need to do is look towards the end of Act 1, where you get the interlude in B minor. This is absolutely absurd. Minor spoilers, it is about a bee flying into the flat, and this is the absolute worst thing that can happen to them. It's treated like the end of the world situation, and this is really, really funny, and they bring it to such a heightened place that you can't help but be a little bit charmed by it, if it feels a little bit unnecessary and a little bit underwhelming as an Act 1 finale, but still wonderfully absurd. Disco Ball is a song that really deeply affected me, especially because it explores a lot of questions about gender. It explores the way society looks at not only trans people, but queer people in general. A really deeply affecting number for me personally, and a song that I'm so thankful that can be performed in the West End right now. Men Are Trash, so fun, way too short. Please give me more of Men Are Trash. That is a fantastic number, so boppy. With a lot of that material that I really do like, there are a lot of things that do feel like they could get trimmed down. Club's Glorious Clubs is a number that I didn't really attach to very much. I didn't really like the song itself. I feel like I got the idea of what they were going for with it by the end of like the first chorus. It felt like it was kind of going on and could have probably been done a little bit stronger through dialogue. Lost is really, really sweet. It's a moment that I wouldn't want to lose, but as a song, I don't know if it quite works. It may be because it kind of comes a little bit out of left field a little bit as they're trying to add a little bit more heart to the show. It's a nice idea. I'm just not really sold on the execution of the number. Shh is a great Marilyn Monroe inspired number. I love the costume reveal. I love what they do to the set in this moment. It's a great stage number, but as I said before, this is a moment where you see a lot of the ideas of the musical start to step on each other's foot. And I feel like what they do in Shh is kind of similarly done, but in a way that I feel like gets it a little bit stronger in Disco Ball, which comes in Act 2. So yeah, while I do feel that this score is good, there are moments to trim here. There are songs to remove. There's clearly, you can see when you're watching it, the material that it feels like they could narrow down or just refine a little bit to make this show a little bit more concise. So we're not just repeating the same things. So we're not going back to ideas we've already stepped over. But what it does succeed at is having that modern sound. It does succeed at the similar things that you love Six for. It does succeed at comedic moments. Oh my God, I always say it's really, really hard, but very important in a comedy musical to put funny lyrics into songs, and constantly and consistently, Why Am I a Single succeeds at that. And this doesn't even brand itself as a comedy musical. So come on, comedy musicals. If Why Am I Single can do it, you can too. Then there's the design and the general staging of this show, which for the most part works. I like a lot of the general ideas that they have here. So the entire show, pretty much all of it, except like one scene, is set within the apartment. We go into a virtual space at a point, we go into a restaurant at a point with some fun background details. But for the most part, this apartment is quite simple. There's a couch, there's two windows that double up as grinder profiles, that double out as windows in restaurants where they pull a curtain down to reveal the sign. It's a very slick set with a couple of doorways as well, which allows us to refigure the space really quickly and push stuff away and out for when we're breaking into some more bigger dancier numbers, but still keeping the space grounded enough. I love how a lot of this stuff doubles up as well. We have a couch where the cushions pull out to build a staircase. Brilliant. We have coffee tables with fancy lights. We have doorways that can turn themselves round depending on which door it needs to be. It's very flexible and very well put together. The only thing I will say is that they have a really cute idea and a really fun idea where the ensemble doubles up as the furniture around the house. So one of them is a plant, one of them is a wall with a plug socket in it for them to charge their phones in. One of them is a wall with a notice board in it for them planning their new big fancy musical. One of them is a fridge. And the design of these is really, really strong. Shout out to the costume designer. Max Johns plays with these ideas and really makes the furniture around the house feel very fashionable. Like we have a fridge puffer jacket, which I honestly kind of want. We have poncho walls. We have like leaves very carefully placed to also double up as fans. It's really creative, really clever, really well done. The only sad thing is that they kind of don't really want to go all in on the furniture idea. I will say it didn't affect me too much, but it's definitely a shame and it's definitely a bit weird that we see doubles for these furnitures, like an actual plant comes out. It feels a little bit like a cop-out in a way, when you've got a really funny idea that they use, but they kind of pick and choose where they want to use it. I feel like it probably would have been more effective if when that furniture is not on stage, it's just gone. For instance, yeah, we see an actual plant come out as well as an ensemble member playing the plant, but we don't see a double up of the fridge. We don't see a double up of certain things. It's kind of a little bit of a pick and mix of what is done by the ensemble, what is done by actual props, what is done by both. I wish they kind of just got in one direction with it. I don't think it was very important to have the actual physical props be on there too. But they bring us to these spaces very well. It's very slickly directed. The choreography by Ellen Kane is fantastic. She also comes onto this project as a co-director, and her slick choreography fits very much the modern style of this show, especially in numbers like See You Never with the tap dance, Disco Ball with the big flashy spectacle of it all, and even the creation of a social media pipeline, a text message system that they make with a long line in 8 dates. It's very creative, very clever, and really adds extra dimension to this musical. And finally, we can speak about this cast. First up, Joe Foster as Oliver. Joe Foster is playing the role inspired by Toby Marlow. They are a non-binary person who uses he, they pronouns. I really enjoy, especially as a trans person watching this, a lot of the discussions that they have around them not really fully understanding or fully being comfortable with their gender yet. This kind of stuff is always a journey, and it always takes a lot of time to find who you are exactly. And I feel like that storyline is really well handled and given a lot of weight and sincerity by Joe Foster's performance. They are flashy, they are campy, they are giving you everything. I love their little inflections on their dialogue, and I love how it all builds up to this reveal of them feeling like they're always just kind of putting on a performance. They truly shine in numbers like Disco Ball. I love them in 8 Dates. They really nail the one-liners that they are given gracefully by Toby Marlow and Lucy Moss's writing. An absolute star in this show and a clear highlight. Lisa Tully's character Nancy is more based on Lucy Moss. She feels a bit more grounded in a way than Oliver is. And I think the pair play off each other really, really well. You get a real sense of their chemistry as friends. You get a real sense of them and their history together. They feel very much like a pair that have been together for years and years and years, with inside jokes and little things that they do with each other. It's a very believable relationship between the pair of them. And I think Lisa Tully succeeds at the more ballady moments, the more softer moments as well. With how grief affects her, with how she's still kind of deeply affected by a previous relationship that broke up. The one that she feels like got away. It's a very lovely and heartfelt performance. Noah Thomas gets a couple of moments in this show to really shine. He plays the best friend. He's very level-headed. He's the guy who comes in and says, both of you are acting like complete and utter nutters and you need to calm down. He's a great presence in this show, a real voice of reason that I feel like is quite needed, and really does get his moments to shine, especially in a number like See You Never. I also want to give a quick shout out to this ensemble. They really do feel like the backbone of this show, constantly flipping between furniture and people and boyfriends and everything. Why Am I So Single has so much going for it. And I think there's so much about it that really does work. The comedy, a lot of its music, the charm of the writing, the relatability of it. There's a lot going for it, and you can see exactly the ingredients in there to create the perfect musical. It just hasn't had the time to be refined. With that refinement, with a couple of tweaks, with shortening it and making it into a one-act show, I feel like this would have been a 5-star musical, something that would really rival Six, not because the shows are massively similar, but because both can stand up on their own. I feel like in the fear and anxiety of trying not to just be Six, they've kind of done a disservice to this concept, which is really good, but doesn't feel like it's serviced by being a massively traditional musical. Why Mr. Single really had two things it needed to do. It either needed to give the musical a little bit more of a plot line, just something a little bit more substantial to justify the longer runtime, or take what it's got, take that less of a story, more autobiographical sense of it, that simple story of two friends just chatting about why they're so single, and just shortening it and refining it so that you can focus really on the character growth within that. Sadly, I don't really think they did either of those. While it has its flaws, definitely, it's a musical that I found myself really enjoying. It's a musical that's got so many fantastic little moments. It's got a wonderful cast, and I definitely would go back to see it again. I feel like a musical like Why Am I So Single is so important to have in the West End that I'm happy to overlook some of my problems with it because of what it does successfully. But what do you think? Have you seen Why Am I So Single? What did you think? Let me know all your thoughts in the comments down below. If you did enjoy this video, please consider hitting like and subscribe. It really helps me out, helps out the channel. Here's some links to some other videos on screen right now and a link to my Instagram if you'd like to drop me a follow over there. I also have other social links and a merch store in the description down below. But that's it for me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!